Thermopylae, Shirayama, Longtan. History is full of truly epic last stands. The Second World War was no different and actually began with one of the strangest last stands in history. In this video, we tell the story of the postmen of the Danzig Polish post office and their bitter fight against the German onslaught. The scene of this epic defense was the free city of Danzig, a semi-autonomous city-state squeezed between Poland and German East Prussia on the Baltic Sea. Danzig was a political anomaly created during the Treaty of Versailles as a compromise between Poland and Germany. As with every good compromise, no one was really happy, but no one wanted another war. Danzig was a rich port city and Polish leaders wanted it to shore up their battered economy. All well and good, but close to 98% of the population was German. Such a high German population meant that when the Great Depression hit in the 1930s, Danzig followed Germany's lead in embracing Nazism. From June 1933, the Danzig government was controlled by the Nazi Party and cooperated closely with Germany. The city police were politicized and used to intimidate opposition journalists and political figures. The 1930s also saw the rise of Hitler's feared paramilitaries, the SA. Also known as the brown shirts due to their distinctive uniforms, these thugs were the Nazi Party's enforcers. They were experts at intimidation, targeting politicians, journalists, Jews, and anyone else deemed undesirable. The brown shirts were essentially the precursors to the infamous SS, who became active in Danzig in 1939. The Danzig SS unit was well equipped, boasting 6 infantry companies and 2 anti-tank companies. There was no shortage of top-notch German weapons or military equipment for the Nazi forces in Danzig. The Danzig City Police Force became yet another arm of the Nazi intimidation machine. Under the command of Nazi city officials, the police worked closely with the brown shirts and later the SS. Armed with German-made weapons, the Danzig police contributed to the widespread persecution of the city's Polish minority. Relations between Poland and Germany deteriorated throughout the 1930s, coming to a head in 1938 when Ribbentrop, the German Minister of Foreign Affairs, demanded Danzig be joined with Germany. Poland refused and the media seized it, establishing Danzig as a symbol of Polish sovereignty important enough to fight over. This was broadly called the Danzig Crisis and was Hitler's major pretense for war with Poland. As war began to look inevitable, the Danzig police drew up plans to capture key Polish institutions in the city. They worked closely with both the brown shirts and the local SS unit, sharing intelligence and preparing weapons. One of the key targets was the Polish post office, a building that was technically sovereign Polish territory. It wasn't just Danzig's Nazi factions and police that could see a war was coming. Polish officials could see it too. They also correctly guessed that the Polish territory in Danzig would get attacked first. To turn the post office into a defensible position, Polish High Command sent in the combat engineer and army reserve Sub-Lieutenant Konrad Gudurski. Sub-Lieutenant Gudurski wasted no time in preparing the building to withstand an assault. Trees and hedges were cut down to remove cover, doors and windows were reinforced and barricades were erected. Sub-Lieutenant Gudurski also brought with him a cache of weapons for the defenders. They had 1 anti-tank rifle, 3 Polish-made Browning automatic rifles, 3 crates of grenades and around 40 other bolt-action rifles and pistols. Their ammunition was extremely limited. Most impressive of all though, Sub-Lieutenant Gudurski managed to whip 43 postmen and clerks into a formidable military force. He appointed the postal worker Alfons Flisikowski as his second in command, and together they organized the men into squads. The postmen were equipped with weapons and taught to kill. The two leaders also worked out a defense strategy where they planned to hold out for a maximum of 6 hours before the Polish Pomeranian army would sweep in to rescue them. Other than the 43 armed and dangerous postmen, 13 Polish civilians were hiding out in the building, including the elderly caretaker, his wife, and their young daughter. By late August, the post office was a fortress, and the postmen were committed to defending it. The mitral naval guns of the German battleship SMS Schleswig-Holstein boomed over Danzig at 4:45 in the morning of September 1st, 1939. The ship was shelling a Polish army garrison in another part of the city, and the sound of her great guns was the signal to commence the attack on the post office. This was the opening salvo of the Second World War. The police were the first to attack. Supported by an ADGZ heavy armored car and the local SS unit, the supposed peacekeepers of the city launched a frontal assault. Simultaneously, a demolition charge blew out a large part of the building's outer wall. The attackers fought their way inside but were forced to retreat in the face of a grenade barrage and massed pistol fire from the determined postmen. 2 Germans were killed and 6 more were wounded in this first assault. Entering through the hole blown out of the wall, the Germans launched a second flanking assault. This was stopped when Sub-Lieutenant Guderski fragged himself and several attackers with his grenades. After the first 2 attacks, the Germans pulled back. Newspaper reporters and Danzig civilians had turned out to watch. Some had even been invited to witness an easy victory. It wasn't going to plan. The champions of German nationalism were losing to a gang of Polish postmen. The time now was 11 o'clock, 6 hours after the attack had begun. Every hour the defenders held out was more embarrassment for the German commander. He borrowed 2 75mm field guns and a 105mm howitzer from the Wehrmacht and began shelling the building. With artillery support, the post office was assaulted again. The postmen held the line. Pulling back, the Germans began firing a mortar in an attempt to dislodge the defenders. It was so badly sighted, however, that shells started raining down all over the place, posing more of a threat to the Germans than to the postmen. Adopting a classic tactic of medieval siege warfare, the German commander decided to dig a sapping tunnel underneath the walls of the post office. He called a ceasefire and gave the postmen 2 hours to consider an offer of surrender, while slowly undermining them from below. The sap was finished that afternoon, and at 5 o'clock that night, a massive explosion rocked the city. A 600-kilogram bomb had been detonated underneath the post office, bringing down the last of its defensive walls. The Germans rushed in and captured the ground floor of the main building, but the Polish Postal Service wasn't done yet. The defenders retreated into the basement and dug in. Desperate to end the embarrassing fiasco, the Germans advanced into the basement and were cut down by the postmen who were still holding out. Wisely understanding that a basement full of 30-odd heavily armed and angry postmen is not somewhere you want to be, the German commander decided to burn the defenders out. A railway car full of gasoline was requisitioned and the fire brigade pumped it into the basement. The fuel was ignited with the grenade blast and 5 of the defenders were rapidly burnt to death. Many more were wounded. It turns out that fire is a postman's only weakness. Under the threat of being cooked alive in the basement, they finally surrendered. The postmen were let out under a white flag by Jan Mihon, the post office's director. Furious at being humiliated by a gang of postmen, the Germans shot Mihon dead. The postmaster, Józef Schwaszik, was then burned alive with a flamethrower. 5 of the burned postmen died in hospital along with the caretaker's 10-year-old daughter, who was forced into the gasoline-filled basement with the defenders. 10 more defenders received medical treatment before being locked up with the others in a makeshift prison. On the 8th of September, the first half of the postmen were tried in a kangaroo court. As civilians who had taken up arms, the Nazis convicted them as illegal combatants and bandits. They were sentenced to death. Their comrades in hospital received the same sentence just a few days later. The postmen were executed in September by firing squad, but 4 managed to escape from the prison and survive the war in hiding. Even by SS standards, these sentences were harsh. Born out of revenge, they reflect the German embarrassment at having taken so long and resorting to such underhanded means to capture the post office. The final tally shows the postmen defended their post for 19 hours against a combined force of over 180 Germans, equipped, mind you, with artillery and armored cars. The Poles killed 10 Germans and wounded 22, while only losing 8 of their own during the siege. Defiant to the end, the postmen of the Danzig Polish post office rebuffed every attack, only succumbing when they were mined from below or had fire poured from them from above. That was the story of the postmen of the Danzig Polish post office and their last stand on the very first day of the Second World War. What do you think about the German siege tactics? How far would you go to protect the mail? Are you a bit scared of Polish postmen now? I know I am, but let us know in the comment section below. And just before you leave me, guys, I would really appreciate it if you checked out some of the links in the description below. You can check us out on Patreon, where we post an exclusive video just there every month, and all our socials, where we post exclusive content and interact exclusively with you guys, including our Discord, Facebook, and Instagram. Anyways, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.